Hi, it's Rashonda. I'm the creator of this channel as well as the artbyro.com blog, where you can find over 200 art and drawing tutorials. So in today's video, we're going to be doing a stained glass window with a cross inside. And this process for doing this type of drawing can be used for anything. It doesn't have to be a cross. You can put animals, flowers, you can put some roses, birds, whatever you want to do. You can do the same process for doing other images as well. So we're going to go ahead and go on over to the studio and get started on this step-by-step drawing tutorial. Something I like to do sometimes with my drawings, if I'm not sure exactly how I want to draw something, you can do a quick sketch exercise, or you could do some little thumbnail drawings. And the purpose here is to just kind of rough out some quick ideas of how you could do your drawings. So in this video, I'm going to be doing a cross stained glass window. And there's just so many different ways that you can draw these. So I'm just using, you can use anything. You can use a pen, a marker, a pencil. I'm using a colored pencil, a black colored pencil, so that it will show up. And I'm just going to quickly sketch out as many ideas as I can for how to draw this stained glass window. And I'm just roughing out some ideas just real quickly. Not any real significant detail, nothing really time consuming. So you can do this by setting a timer and doing a specific amount of time, or you can just work until you fill up your piece of paper. And the size of your paper really doesn't matter. I'm using some scrap paper that I have. It's left over from some projects that I did years ago, and it's just kind of taking up room. So it's something I want to try to use up, get it out of the closet, free up some space. So I'm just roughing out some quick ideas of different styles of stained glass cross combinations that I can do, different designs, the different elements that I can put into it, just to give myself an idea of what my options are. And then I can kind of look at them and determine what it is that I want to put into my stained glass drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and keep working on these, and I will be back when they are finished. So as you can see, I filled the entire paper up, and really all I wanted to do is work through a few different concepts of how I could do these drawings. Again, this is a good warm-up exercise. It's a good way to kind of think through your drawing ideas and to help you come up with some different variations of how you can do your drawings. All right, so for this video, I'm going to be showing you how I did my stained glass window, and the image is going to have a cross inside. I chose the cross for this particular video just because it's very simple to draw. Pretty much anybody can draw a cross, but this method for drawing the stained glass windows can be applied to any type of an image, whatever image you want to put inside. The process would be the same. So I'm doing this on an artist trading card. If you've been following me for any amount of time, you know I love doing my drawings on artist trading cards. So it's a little bit smaller. You can use whatever size paper you want. But I am going to start today by making a frame for my window. So I'm using a pencil. I'm going to use a ruler. If you're good at drawing straight lines and you don't want to use a ruler, that's fine. Feel free to do your art in whatever way that's comfortable for you. I don't have the steadiest hands, so for this, because I do want my lines to be fairly straight, I think it's easier for me to just go ahead and use a ruler. So with that, I do want to point out that I didn't measure anything. I just eyeballed it. I'm not too worried about everything being exactly perfect, but I do want my lines to be fairly straight. So that is the frame. That will be done in stained glass as well. You could also just do it just solid black. There are so many variations in how you can do this, which is why it's a good idea to do those sketch exercises ahead of time. So now what I want to do is draw my cross. And I like doing guidelines because it helps me to make sure I have the placement and the size correct. And that way I can erase anything that I need to erase ahead of time. Again, this is just the way that I like to do things. If you feel like you don't need to draw guidelines, or if that seems tedious to you, by all means, skip that part of it and do your drawing the way you want to do your drawing. So now I'm just going to use that guide to draw out my cross. And for today's video, I'm just keeping this really simple. You can do crosses that are quite a bit more complex than what I'm doing today. I'm just doing the simplest cross drawing that I can do. Okay, so that's good for the cross. Now you can clean up these lines as you go, but we're going to go over them with black anyway, and then we can just go right over top the entire drawing afterwards. So there's my basic drawing. You can clean it up as you want. Once you're satisfied with how it looks, then we're going to go ahead and outline it with a black pen or marker. So for this video, because it is going to be stained glass and I want my frame and my outside edge of my cross to be fairly dark compared to the stained glass elements, I'm going to do a black pen, and I'm going to use this bullet point. Now, as you're doing your artwork, there are different decisions that you can make. One of those is how thick you want your lines to be. Another one is these corners. I do want some lines going through them, but I think I want those to be thinner than the border lines are. That's a personal preference. So I could have gone straight down with this marker, but I think what I would rather do is use my pen for those lines so that they're thinner. Because what we want is our focal points, which will be for the way I'm doing mine is going to be the frame and the cross itself. We want those lines to be heavier and more noticeable. And then when we do our stained glass parts of it, then those are going to be thinner because we want the cross to stand out more than the stained glass part, if that makes sense. So I got this outline done. Now I can erase these inside guidelines that I drew. And now I have my marker, or my pen rather, and I'm going to go ahead and make this inside frame part before those lines get erased, since they're there and they're what I want. Okay, so now we're starting to work on the stained glass itself. Now for the rest of this border, you can leave them the way they are. You can do a couple of lines in here. You can do several lines in here. This is where all these personal preferences come in. And this is also where you end up with some variation on your artwork compared to how somebody else would do their artwork. And these aren't perfect. We're not too worried about keeping everything perfect. Try to eyeball it the best you can. But an important aspect of creating art is trying things, going for it, and not being super worried about everything always having to be exactly perfect all the time. So that's it for the frame part. Now for this inside, we're going to draw straight lines, kind of random, but we want to be somewhat intentional with how we're drawing them, because we want to make sure we have some nice shapes in here. We're just making some, basically just some geometric shapes with straight lines, but we don't want these areas to be too big. And we also don't need any type of a pattern. We want them to be very random. So all I'm going to do is just keep drawing lines at various angles. And also the shapes that are, or the size of the shapes, I want some variety. I don't want it to be overly uniform. I want it to be somewhat random, but I'm being intentional about how I'm drawing my lines at the same time. So I'm just going to keep working around, filling these in. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up, and then I'll be back when I have that part of it finished. All right, so now I have my stained glass pieces all drawn out. And again, I wasn't being super intentional. I was being intentional, but at the same time random, if that makes sense to you. You want to be somewhat deliberate with how you're doing them, but at the same time you want to avoid any type of patterns. You want them to still look somewhat random. So now I'm going to draw, or color rather, the inside of the cross. And I am using alcohol-based markers, which I typically use because that way I can blend my colors together. And what I like to do is lay down my lightest color first. Now I could just do this a solid yellow, or you can go in here and break up the inside of this and make it have the stained glass pattern in it as well. But instead I want to just put a couple different colors in here. And I want to blend these together so there's not as harsh of an edge. And I think what I'll do is just fill in with this darker color just the ends of each side of the cross here, just to give it a little variation. Now I'm just showing you one way to make this. There's tons of different ways. There's different ways you can do the colors. You could use a different color other than the yellow. You could use a red, you could use browns. There's really no limit to what you could do with your colors. There's a couple things I'm gonna suggest. That doesn't mean you have to follow them, but I feel like it will make your life a little bit easier if you do follow them. But again, experimenting and trying new things is a good opportunity to increase your skills and come up with new creative ideas. So I don't think it's overly necessary to always follow other people's suggestions or so-called rules that are in place for how to create art. So what I want to do here, I'm going to do my border. And since I used yellow for the inside of the cross, I want to stick with warm colors on the outside as well. And those warm colors are your reds, oranges, yellows, the things that feel warm, basically. And I'm also not worrying about keeping any type of pattern on here. I'm doing my colors randomly. You could make this a pattern if you wanted to. That's up to you. Again, I'm just doing this one way. There's many, many different ways. And that's why I like doing my drawings on artist trading cards, because it does give you the freedom to experiment and try new things. Because I'm not doing a big drawing that's going to take hours and hours for me to finish, in which case I would be much less likely to want to experiment and try some different things out. You could use just a couple of colors if you wanted. It's really up to you and how you want to do your drawing and your colors. I always say you should do whatever feels right to you, and not necessarily always follow other people's recommendations. If they don't feel right, then I don't think you should do that just because that's how somebody else said that they think you should do something. And also, what I do with my markers is that I have these little scrap pieces and I test them out on there, so I know what my colors are going to look like. And the colors I'm using for this are a little muted, I guess you would call them. They're not really bright. So I do want to keep with that. And I don't want to put like a real dark, bright color in here. because I want it to look consistent throughout. So if I took a nice bright red, even though it's still a warm color, and it would follow that rule that I'm following with this to keep them all warm colors. If I put a nice real bright red in here, I think it would throw the whole thing off, and what it would do is bring your attention to that color because it's so much brighter than the rest of it. So I'm just finishing this up by filling the rest of these in. Okay, so the frame is done. The cross is done. So the next thing is to do this background piece. And for that, since we used warm colors here, I'm going to use cool colors for this so that this cross will stand out more. So your cool colors are your blues, purples, greens. So I'm going to grab some markers real quick, and I will be back to finish up on the background. Okay, so I picked out some colors, testing them on this little sheet over here. I do want to talk about the markers themselves for a minute, and I'll talk about those while I'm finishing up this background. So I'm going to do basically the same thing I did for the border, where I'm going to just fill in each of these areas with the colors that I have picked out. And again, I'm doing cool colors for the background. This is fairly random. I'm trying not to have the same exact color next to each other. But other than that, I'm just jumping around the different areas, filling these sections in. So for the markers that I'm using, you can mix, they're all alcohol markers, but you can mix and match the brands. You don't have to use all the same brand of marker. But if you want to be able to blend the markers, then you do want to make sure you have alcohol-based markers. So the ones I'm using for the background are different from the other ones that I used because these are a cheap off-brand marker that somebody had bought for me. And I don't have too many opportunities to use them because they don't work very well if you want to blend the different colors together. They tend to bleed a lot more than the other markers do, and which is not optimal because you end up with fuzzy edges to your drawings. So if you're trying to blend different colors together like I did with the inside of the cross, that doesn't work out very well. So the markers that I used for the inside, those were Bic markers. And I have some Sharpie markers. I don't even know how many different brands of markers that I have that I've purchased throughout the years, just trying different markers, trying different brands, seeing which ones have the best selections of color. Because ideally you want a pretty good variety of markers to use. And that can get a little bit expensive. So you have to find that balance between cost and having the supplies that you need to work in the way that you want to work, that isn't going to interrupt your workflow. But you can mix and match the different markers. You can use more expensive markers if you want. Some markers you can buy individual colors. You can buy just a single individual color marker. And then other ones, you have to buy them in sets. And buying a set is usually a little bit cheaper, but you don't really have any control over the color of markers that you're getting. You have to just sort of live with whatever's provided in that set. But these markers are fine. So, like I said, somebody bought them for me. I wouldn't have normally purchased them myself. And they're fine, they just don't work well for blending. But since these are just getting filled in with solid color, that doesn't really matter. So they're working fine for what I need to do here today. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll speed this up while I finish this, and then I will be back when I am done. All right, so I am finished with this drawing. I have the inside all filled in with my cool colors. We have the border and the cross with some warm colors. So this method can be applied to any object inside. And also you can try some different variations with putting borders around your objects. You could do solid colors for the objects. You could do stained glass shapes in the inside, and you can experiment with some different ways of doing that. I would recommend, if you wanted to do a stained glass pattern inside the cross itself, to avoid these same types of triangular shapes and maybe do straight lines inside, and then maybe limit your colors to just a couple. But again, the artist trading cards are really great for experimenting, trying out some new things. Hopefully I've given you some ideas for different ways you can try doing your artwork, and I hope this gives you a good starting point and encourage you to get started in doing your own. So I will see you in the next video. Happy creating! Well, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching it until the end. If you enjoyed this, please give us a like. It really helps the channel grow. And also don't forget to subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos. And check the description box. In there you'll find the link to the Artist Trading Card Guide, which is a free download, as well as some other helpful links. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you soon. Bye!